Welcome to With Love Men, where we dig deep into what it truly means to be a man. I'm Jake Fishbein.
And I am Nick Papadopoulos, affectionately known as Coach Nick.
Together, we've led men's groups for combined 25 years.
On top of that, we have written a novel about a fictional men's group and the impact of that work.
We also lead a men's group called the Arena Men's Group. And this podcast is another space where we have real conversations about vulnerability, courage, and connection. No masks, no pretending, just honest talk about being men.
So, with that in mind, take a deep breath, step into the arena with Jake and myself, and let's get going.
Let's do it.
So, we're
Today's
going to
all
talk,
about
oh,
self-worth.
self-worth. There you go. Self-worth, and you might hear us use the term mattering. Do I matter? Or what is my mattering conversation inside of the context of self-worth? So I'm going to ask you a question. And for those who are tuning in for the first time, our format is that Jake and I will ask each other several questions that we've come up with and not shared with the other person as a way to create a more spontaneous, more real-time type of conversation. So we really are putting each other on the hot seat, which often happens in one of our men's group sessions. So Jake, you're gonna go on the hot seat first. You have the pleasure.
I'm on the hot seat first.
What's the other term you've used for the hot seat in one of our group
We've
sessions?
called it the love seat before.
Love seat. Okay. All right.
Love can get hot sometimes, so
Yes, yes, yes. Sometimes that could be really good love.
really great.
All right, we'll save that talk
That would be a
when
different
we
episode.
talk about men and intimacy or men and sex. So as it relates to self-worth, this conversation of self-worth and a man's relationship to self-worth. Why do men in our work, right? We often find men being inside of a crisis around their self-worth, right? Or another way put, like I said a few minutes ago, their conversation of mattering, right? Why does that happen? And when does that show up? So it's sort of two-parter. So
Mhm.
I don't let you off easy. Why does that happen with men? Why are men often finding themselves in a crisis around their relationship to their own self-worth? And how does it show up? Like what's a good example of that?
Yeah. Well, first, what I would want to say is I think every single human being finds themselves in a crisis of self-worth at some point in their lives. So it's certainly not men and not women,
Right.
because there's plenty of women who have that experience as well. But we're here to talk about men, so that's
Yes.
where we're going to focus. But I wanted to put that at the top first. Ultimately, every single person I've ever met, every man who's come into our men's group, every man that I've coached, at some point doesn't believe that he's good enough, doesn't believe that he matters, doesn't believe that he has any value, doesn't believe that he deserves something. For each guy, probably comes from a different place, but inevitably, we have some experience when we're a child that teaches us that we don't matter,
Right.
that we're not valuable,
Right.
that we're not valued. And I think that's different for everybody. I think for men in particular, probably, especially for straight men, but for gay men too, can definitely come up in terms of early romantic relationships and
Right.
romantic interest. I certainly can think back to my early crushes and not getting that validation when my crushes didn't like me. And I had a crush on the same girl for 4 years from seventh grade till 10th grade. And let's just say did a number on me for a number
And
of
and
reasons.
because of your self-worth at that time, did she know that?
At certain times she did, but not because I was super forthright about it.
Got it.
And luckily, we're still friends to this day and we can look back on it and laugh. But at that time, the feelings were so powerful, it was so new. Whenever I felt rejected, which was most of the time,
Right.
had me make up a story that nobody likes me. The girls I don't like me. Didn't help that some of my friends at the time, teenage boys, are great at not valuing each other.
Right.
And so that also, I think, particularly for men, as I'm talking, that's another big reason that men on men friendships are not super supportive.
Mm.
That oftentimes there's a lot of tearing each other down, especially in those teenage years where everybody's insecure. And
Mhm.
I still remember very clearly to this day, it was probably about 11th grade, going for a run. I ran track and field, and
Right.
I was out with my two best friends in high school, and we were running. And one of them, who was friends with the hottest girl in the school, they used to ski together.
Okay.
And he said that he asked her, he said, who's the hottest of the three of us? And that she said it was him, then our other friend, and then me.
You were in last place out of the three.
I was in last place out of the three.
That'll do a number on your self-worth.
Oh, it wrecked my self-worth. I didn't think I was attractive. And what's ridiculous now looking back on it is how false, even if she thought that, which
Right.
maybe she did, maybe she didn't. I put so much value in that statement. And it backed up all the other stories I had, which was nobody likes me, nobody who I like likes me, so I must not be attractive.
Right.
And I think many men, if they don't have this, the experience I had, because everybody's different, have some kind of early experiences, either in those early romantic relationships or with their parents, where their parents are really distracted, they have a lot going on, and so they're not valuing their children. And that gets embedded in men. And suddenly men go through the world. Oh, by the way, men get the message that they have to take care of everybody, that they have
Mm,
to be the providers, that if they're feeling bad, they shouldn't talk about it. They should just suck it up and
right.
keep going, that they should be stoic and repress their emotions. These messages again and again that what you feel doesn't matter. If
Mm,
you're tired, it doesn't matter. If you want
right.
to do something else, it doesn't matter. Happy wife, happy life. Take care of
Right.
your wife, but you don't matter. So
Right.
these recurring messages over and over and over again that I think just gets in men's heads. I'm not important.
Right.
I need to set
Absolutely.
aside my own stuff. And so that kind of gets to the second part of your question of that's how it shows up is the perpetuation
Right.
of those stories. And then making choices that don't value what we want.
Right. Right. Yeah, that feels almost hopeless. Like how the heck do you get out of that spiral or out of that paradigm, right? Because like you said, it just perpetuates. And it's not just, a lot of the narratives that we talk about in these episodes, they're narratives that are formed and reinforced by everyone, men, women, whomever, society as a whole.
Yeah, I'm on YouTube, and we talked about this recently because I just read this book called Men Who Hate Women, which is by this woman, Laura Bates, about the manosphere. And she was talking about the algorithms online. And I'm using that for some context
Sure.
because you look at my YouTube channel, you'd think that I love Star Wars, which is accurate, that I love food, which is accurate, and that
Greek food, right?
I do love Greek
Okay,
food.
just a shout out for the
Shout
Greeks.
out for the Greeks, and that I love being in the alt-right in the manosphere as well,
Oh,
because
interesting.
I've watched a few of those videos to understand what other people in the men's work world are talking about.
Got it.
And the algorithm continues to feed those to you. And so I saw one yesterday about this young man. He probably posted it on TikTok, but it found its way to YouTube. And he was saying, he was answering the question, some woman asked, like, why, why don't men try more in dating?
Right.
And he had to be like 20, 22. And he had this whole flow chart. And he said, well, when we're young, we fall in love and our first girlfriend, and then inevitably she cheats on us. And we learn to like stuff down all our emotions. And but then we meet somebody else and we open up again and she cheats on us too. And so we just learn to shut down all our emotions and it's not worth dating. And I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, that's usually what happens. Not the cheating part, but as you know, I always say the buy-in
Right.
for love is heartbreak.
Right.
If you want to be in a relationship, you're probably going to get heartbroken,
Right.
especially if it's early on.
Right.
But for this message to be the answer to what I should not date is because I'm being heartbroken is so, I mean, it makes sense, but it's so ridiculous.
Right.
And that's the point. That's what you're putting on the table when you look for relationships. But that's the messages young men are getting, which is why even bother?
Right. Right. And you're automatically right from the start protecting yourself.
Exactly.
And the lens you have is to protect yourself at all cost. And you're going to find the evidence that you're going to get cheated on or misled, or that women, in the case that you're sharing, is, are going to be evil and do awful things to you. Uh, which is interesting because by by that person or people protecting themselves, they're really not.
No, it's interesting that my experience to elevate self-worth is to experience more of that pain, ironically.
Hmm.
And then to see that, oh, I can make it through this.
Right,
I'm going to ask for what I need, and I'm either going to get rejected or it's going to get rewarded.
right, right, right. Awesome.
So the question I have for you,
This better be a simple one, Jake. You always throw me these high
this is
high hard ones, high
this is one,
fastballs,
two,
high
three,
and
four,
tight.
five, it's like 7 words. What's helped you in your own experience? What's helped you elevate your own self-worth when it's been lacking?
I would say the my biggest, if you want to call it a strategy or go-to, to remind myself that I'm a-okay, you know? I'm okay, I'm valuable, I'm worthy, I matter. I would say is immersing myself in work or types of work, types of projects, and with people that fill me up and that I naturally, from a work or project or task perspective, right, is immersing myself and engaging in work and activities that I am naturally talented at, I am naturally expressed in, where I really believe I can make a difference and give back. That's one of our core values in our men's groups. And so for me, it's interesting. Often, we run our men's groups every couple of weeks, and there are many times when an hour before the session, I don't feel like being on it, right? Because it's been either a long day or a long week, or it's been one of those days, right, where I'm questioning my self-worth, I'm questioning the value that I offer, or can I even contribute? And it's really fascinating. We start our sessions at 7 p.m. and literally at 7 p.m. every time, if we're, on Zoom or, with my other men's group or in person, the minute the lights go on, all of a sudden I feel worthy. I feel like a blanket of worthiness comes over me because I just get reconnected to my core. I get reconnected to what is important to me. I get reconnected to my unique and natural set of talents and interests, which we all have. Um, so for me, it's immersing myself, like I said, and doubling down on the work, the projects, the tasks, and then part two is, in essence, doing the same with the people that matter to me, right? Hanging out. Yesterday watching the Knicks playoff game, right? They're in round one, and it is so amazing to I watched it with my younger son, and we had our arms around each other, and I'm hooting and hollering. You know how emotional I get with sports, and I don't want to sound cliche in any way, but the game mattered. And at the same time, I promise you, what mattered most for me and what filled me up most was having my son with me, and, holding each other, and even the banter and him laughing at me every time I got emotional. When I'm in that space, I feel worthy. I am filled up. I feel like I matter, to be honest, because in both examples, let's call it immersing myself with work or immersing myself with the people who are important to me, I can really see and feel the impact of the contribution that I make to that situation or to that person.
Mhm.
So the net would be, wherever and whenever I can make a contribution, wherever and whenever I can make a difference, um, again, either in work or in a relationship with someone, I really my level of mattering skyrockets because I feel like, you know what, I was just able to move the needle and have some kind of an impact. And hopefully that person, project, or the world is a little bit different and a little bit better than it was from before, but it's a little bit different, a little bit better because I'm here and I'm a
Mm.
part of it.
That's such a powerful point, and we often talk about that focusing outward and
Right,
making a difference for others. And at the same time, I've encountered men, I've encountered women for that matter too, who, when asked what fills you up, they say, I don't know.
right,
And that's one of the consequences of not feeling like you matter, is putting everyone else first and not even
right,
knowing to run a men's group session at 9 o'clock or watch the Knicks game with your son.
right.
So what would you say to the men out there who are saying, that sounds, Nick, that sounds great. Like, I love that idea, but I don't know what fills me up.
Well, I would say you do, right? I actually believe everybody does at some level. It may not be obvious to everyone, or it may be less obvious to some. And so my recommendation and invitation is to pay attention to what inspires you, to pay attention to what puts a smile on your face, to pay attention when you are in the opposite state, right, where you seem more quiet and less energetic, or you feel like your energy is tapped, right? Our work, a lot of the work that we do, the word that we use, or it's really a sentiment, which is notice. Notice your reaction, right? Notice that you just did or said that. Notice that you didn't say or do that, right? Just notice, right? We're always about noticing, and so my recommendation is to get grounded and to start noticing and taking inventory, either journaling and or sharing with somebody important to you to go, you know what, I was fill in the blank doing today, and I just it sucked the life out of me, or
Mm,
it lifted me up like it's nobody's business. And I would say for men in particular, really be okay with uh, really be okay with being okay with the things that society may say is not manly, right? You know, me sharing how, you know, I've got my arm around my son, he's got his arm around me, right? Is filling me up. Some men may not want that to be the number one thing that they want to acknowledge is filling them up, right? Um, or, gardening, right?
mm,
I mean, I know that, gardening for many, many people, it fills them up, right? It has them feel like they are making a difference, right? They're creating something beautiful, outside and or inside for that matter, right? Just I would say for men, give yourself permission to be filled up by whatever and whomever and whenever, and not worry about, is this what other men are doing? Or am I any less of a man? Or am I weird? Am I different than other men because I like such and such? Very quick example. All my life, I've always loved dramas. And I always have loved dramas, movies, right? Going to the cinema to watch a drama and to cry. And many guys, right, love adventures and sort of the action packed, or, the superheroes. And there's a time, or science fiction, right? There's a place for all of that, right? I mean, and there's times when I've enjoyed those movies as well. Maybe I can count them on one finger, but nonetheless, right? Like you like Star Wars, for right?
I
Like
do.
I mean, you don't like, you are passionate about it, right?
I'm wearing a Star Wars t-shirt, right?
There you go, show off, right? I don't. I mean, Star Wars is fine. I don't care about it. I never have, and I've always felt weird about it. And I've always felt weird about acknowledging. Like you shared in a previous episode about not acknowledging that you never saw Pulp Fiction because it might be weird because everybody else has seen Pulp Fiction and they know every song and all that. And I just love to cry at movies, and I love drama, man. I love series on Netflix or in the cinema that's going to make you cry and have like heavy dialogue. You know what? I love that. And that actually has me filled up and has me feel like I matter. Even though maybe I'm unique, that not unique, but maybe less men do that. So bottom line, notice, take inventory, and give yourself permission, absolutely permission, to allow yourself to enjoy whatever it is, regardless of what society says is, right or wrong for a man.
What I'm so present to, as you've talked to, particularly at the end, which is what I heard is enjoy what you enjoy,
Yes.
is that self-worth comes from internal.
Yes. Yes.
That if I'm chasing self-worth from what the hottest girl at my high school was going to say, or who I had a crush on, or what my friends were going to say, that's just this fleeting hit of dopamine.
Right.
But if I can intrinsically have self-worth from I enjoy what I enjoy, and I'm not going to
Right.
care what other people think about it, then
Right.
my self-worth is going to be solid.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. So let me ask you this question, and maybe it's a build from the first one I asked, just to peel it back even further. As men, generally, we are wired to take care and protect. How does our relationship, and we're making a generalization, and we've seen this, we've had a front row seat by being, coaches and facilitators with men. If a man's DNA is to protect and take care of others, right? How does their low self-worth or lack of self-worth contradict that sentiment when they're interacting with their, let's call it, loved ones or employees, people who work for them, or in their communities, their neighbors, etc.?
Well, first off, I think our society has glorified the man who will take the shirt off his back. I always
Literally.
think about literally, think about the Titanic, which the anniversary was last week. When I was actually on the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, the same time when
Right.
the same anniversary of the Titanic sinking. And what did they do now? They didn't have enough lifeboats, women and children first.
Mm,
And it was honorable for the men to give up their lives
right.
for the women and the children. That our society, and those are just two examples, has glorified the self-sacrificing man
Right.
as like that's the pinnacle of masculinity.
Mm,
Now, the issue is this metaphor is not really going to make any sense, but we only have so many shirts to give off our backs.
right.
If I'm in a long-term relationship with anybody,
Right.
be it a romantic one, be it with children, be it with friends, be it with
Business.
parents, business, if I consistently take the shirt off my back, eventually I'm going to run out of shirts.
Right.
And then I have nothing left to give. And so that's how it contradicts, because if we're meant to protect, we have to start with protecting ourselves. How
Mm,
can I possibly protect my girlfriend or our future children or my friends or the men's group or my clients when I'm not taking care of me?
right.
I only have so much energy. We have a saying in our group that we use all of the time, and it's so interesting. Some men latch onto it right away, and we've had men who can't remember the words for years at a time, which is I get to love me so I can love you, so you can love you, so you can love me back.
Mm,
And it's the old analogy of the oxygen mask on the airplane, which
yep.
is incredibly cliche, but it's cliche for a reason.
Right.
That if I'm on an airplane and I'm sitting next to a child and I put their mask on first and I pass out and I'm able to do it, they're going to suffer too.
Right. Right.
And so self-worth is like the oxygen, it's the fuel we can give ourselves so we can protect,
Right.
so we can take care of. We have to take care of ourselves first. And some people say that's selfish. I really don't think it's selfish. It's actually a generous act to be able to say, I need some time for myself. Or it's a generous act to say, I'll do that in an hour.
Right.
I need to shut my eyes for a bit. I need to go read. I need to do X, Y, and Z. And
Right.
men are just, I think, chasing that glorification. There was a great line from this book, For the Love of Men. I think that's what it was called. Can't remember the author's name. I always forget her name. Came out a number of years ago, and she said, and this is not a new concept, she said, for women, femininity is just assumed. Like as a woman, like you're a woman.
Right.
No one says woman up. Like that's not a thing. I did say it to my girlfriend the other day, jokingly, and she was like, never say that to me again. But man up is all the time.
Right.
And she made the point that as men feel the need to prove their masculinity every single day
Yeah.
because some other dude is going to come along and take away their man card
Right.
if they don't prove they're a man.
Right.
And I think that taking our shirt off our back, women and children first, protecting, forsaking ourselves for the sake of someone else is a version of proving that I'm a man.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just not a healthy one.
I'm reminded of a share from this morning with one of my colleagues. I was in a conversation with one of my colleagues, and I was sharing how this past week our car got totaled because my partner was waiting at a red light, and she got hit from behind. The other person's car got totaled. Our car got totaled, so we needed to go buy a car. So we're talking about this, and she said, "Now this is a colleague who just had a baby a few months ago and has another child. I believe 4 years and younger, right? So like really small people, which is pretty intense, right? And her father, who's in his mid 70s, was coming to help them out, which is very sweet. And she said, "Well, funny you should talk about, getting hit from behind and, car getting totaled." She said, "My dad got hit from behind as well 2 weeks ago. And when he came to stay with us to take care, to help us, the parents, right? His daughter, right, and his two grandchildren, right? Again, this is this notion of protecting and taking care of. He was having trouble walking around, certainly had trouble lifting the baby even. Now, babies are not that heavy. He had broken his sternum.
Oh,
Now, the sternum is connected to the rib. Now, obviously I'm not a clinician, but he was having trouble breathing and he was experiencing pain. This is 2 weeks and did not tell anybody. And the only reason why they just found out is because while he was supposed to be taking care of and protecting his family, the daughter noticed all of this, the struggle in lifting up the baby, him breathing. He's got a I think the right term is a broken sternum. And so there's an example of manning up and sucking it up, yet and not being able to take care of his family,
yeah.
right?
That is, I mean, there couldn't be a more perfect example of that. And it makes me think to sports. And I was a college athlete, and my coach always told me, he said, if you're hurt, tell us.
Right,
Because it was selfish to pretend not to be hurt.
right,
Did I do that? No, not all of the time. And it led to some injuries
right,
that cost the team.
right.
The message I'm getting from you in that story is it's actually selfish to man up in
Yes,
that way.
spot on. Yep.
So we're getting back to the end of our time. So I have one final question. I think which one or where I want to end. Oh, it's staring right at me.
This has my name written all over it.
It has your name has the end of an episode written all over it, which is what would your message be to someone who is struggling to value themselves right now? Someone who's in that place of I'm not worth it.
You're not alone. You really are not alone. It really is an experience that I believe everybody goes through, navigates through. I think you mentioned at the beginning of our episode here about, where I think you said there are moments where have low self-worth, low self-esteem. I believe it's really, really important to know that you're not alone, because as men in particular, we are wired to compete. We are wired to compare. And so men are not allowed to have a bad day, if you will. We're not allowed to get sick. We're certainly not allowed to get depressed. We're certainly not allowed to have low self-esteem or low self-worth. And so that creates even more loneliness. That creates even more shame, because I'm different. I'm less than. Every other man in particular is in a different place, better place. They're further ahead. And so I would say, to avoid comparison, avoid uh, the comparison, because otherwise you're going to feel like you're unique, that you're the only one going through it. And I really believe that all men have that experience. Now, how they deal with it is certainly different, and do they ever share about it? I mean, that's a whole nother ball game, right? I can say that in my experience, up until doing men's work 20 years ago, I would never have shared that I
Mhm.
felt different, or that I felt alone, or that I was having a bad day or a bad year. And so again, uh, that shame that I carried only grew, because shame grows, as Brene Brown says, in darkness, right? And that shame will make you sick,
Mhm.
because it's a weight that is really, really hard to carry. The second thing that I would say is, because you're not alone with the experience you're having, I would say the part two to it is to make connections, is to connect with somebody, is to connect with people. And I mean this in the most serious way, even if that means going outside your house and, going to your coffee shop or your pizza place or the deli. We have delis here in Manhattan. So a place like that, right? A coffee shop where you can just even connect with the person behind the counter, or make eye contact and smile with somebody else, who, a guest who's at the store or the location, and even strike up a surface type conversation, or your person delivering your mail. I, and I mean that sincerely. Just connect. Look
Mhm.
for opportunities to connect, even if they may occur as super small, if you will.
I love that. And I want to, that I'm just going to double click on that or ditto that for what I would say, but I want to tell a quick story to illustrate it, which was this was 2019, a number of years ago. I was living in a different part of the city in Brooklyn. I was in a different relationship that I was not so happy in at the time. And I was having a lot of feelings of low self-worth.
Mm.
And I was stuck in my career. I was just starting coaching and it wasn't really catching on yet. And I went to the dog park with my dog.
Right.
And I was sitting at the dog park and there's other woman there with her dog. And she and I just started talking. And turned out she was Greek. So her last name was
And
Papadopoulos.
and what's your dog's name?
My dog's name is Zorba, Zorba the Greek.
Yep.
So we were talking, we connected. She loved Zorba. She lived in the neighborhood. She and I just like we really hit it off.
Right.
And she had two teenage daughters getting ready to apply for college. And we exchanged information. I got an email when I got home that she's looking for someone to tutor her daughters for their college prep. And I had no business tutoring anyone with college prep. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But I felt so seen by this
Mm,
stranger.
so cool.
And I said earlier to not rely on external validation for your self-worth because it's a dangerous cycle you can get trapped in. The one caveat I will say to that is when it comes from a stranger, it can be really powerful.
Great call out. Great call out. Although in your story, Jake, you did muster up the energy,
I
right?
got out there.
You got out there. And
And
so
that's
it
what I
was
was.
Right. It
clicking
was
on.
internal, right? You know, how people say if you put yourself in enough situations, you get quote unquote lucky,
Yes,
right? That's what it reminds me of, right? You were able to get yourself physically outside, and you were able to allow yourself to have a conversation with somebody. You were outside of your head versus in your head.
exactly. In our men's group, we talk about being in the arena. And
Right.
you can't be in the arena unless you get out of your house and go somewhere. And I think that would be the only addition to the message. Then it's really
Love
just
it.
like a furthering of it, which is out in the world is what matters.
Right.
When you're feeling low self-worth, don't go on the internet.
Right.
Don't go to message boards.
Right.
Don't go to YouTube or Twitter. I mean, X or TikTok.
Right.
Go into the world and meet people.
Right.
That could be a Zoom call too. We host our Arena Men's group every 2 weeks.
Yes.
That's a little plug, but that is a way of, it may be virtual, but it is meeting people face to face, which is very, very different than communicating through words on a platform.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Are we at our
All
parting
right.
shots?
We're at our parting shots.
You want to go first? Want me to go first?
Yeah, my parting shot is you matter because you exist. That's it.
Mm,
That's it. You don't need anything more than that to know that you matter.
you just reminded me of something I used to say when I first got into coaching, 20 plus years ago, like you, at the beginning, vulnerable about my ability, not as successful, not as consistent in the value I was providing. And I remember the game changer was I matter because I say so.
Mhm.
Because I say so, I matter. Because I say so, my value, my self-worth elevates always.
Yes.
You must acknowledge yourself first. You must. It's an absolute must. You don't need the evidence. You don't need the external evidence. Just because you say so. Just start there.
Yeah. Start there and love yourself so that you can love others.
What's that? What's the sentiment we say in group one last time to leave everybody with?
I love me so I can love you, so you can love you, so you can love me back.
Drop the mic.
And with that, we love Jake and Nick.
With love, Nick and Jake. Thanks, everybody.
We'll see you next time.